They told everyone I scrubbed toilets for a living. I was standing 10 feet away when my mother said it, smiling, laughing, as if my entire life was a punchline. And at my sister's wedding of all places, they reduced me to a shameful secret. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that the groom had already discovered the truth. And he was about to say it, out loud. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, erased by the very people who were supposed to love you, then stay with me, because this story isn't just about humiliation. It's about patience, about power, and about the kind of karma that doesn't knock politely before it walks in. My name is Emily Turner, and this is the story of how my parents tried to shrink me at my sister's wedding, and how everything unraveled right in front of them. I have cleaned houses. Let me start there. I have scrubbed marble floors on my knees until my back ached. I have polished glass tables so clear they disappeared beneath my hands. I have folded other people's laundry with the kind of precision that makes strangers think you're invisible. There is no shame in honest work. But that's not why my parents said it. They didn't say it because they respected labor. They said it because they were embarrassed. Embarrassed of me. My sister Claire had always been the golden child, blonde, delicate, effortlessly charming, the kind of girl who floated through life on soft smiles and curated Instagram posts. She worked in brand strategy, which mostly meant taking photos of oat milk lattes and calling it consulting. I, on the other hand, built things. I studied business and finance on scholarships. I worked nights. I saved aggressively. I invested quietly. I started a property management company at 26, then expanded into short-term rentals. By 32, I owned 14 properties. And yes, in the early years, I personally cleaned some of them. Because margins mattered. Because control mattered. Because I didn't come from money. At least, not the kind that would ever be given to me. My parents liked to pretend they were comfortable, upper middle-class suburban comfort. My father worked in insurance. My mother hosted charity luncheons and spoke about legacy, as if she'd inherited a dynasty instead of a split-level house in a gated community. They poured everything into Claire. Dance lessons, private tutors, a European self-discovery trip after college that somehow lasted 9 months. When I asked for help with my MBA tuition, my father cleared his throat and said, "We just don't have that kind of liquidity right now." 2 weeks later, they bought Claire a car. It wasn't hatred, that would have been easier. It was hierarchy. Claire was delicate porcelain, I was practical ceramic. Useful, durable, not display-worthy. I stopped asking for anything by 23. I built quietly instead. And I never corrected them when they told extended family that I was figuring things out. When Claire got engaged to Daniel Whitmore, the wedding became a production. Daniel came from real money, old money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. His family owned regional hotels, investment portfolios, foundations with their names carved into stone buildings. My mother nearly vibrated with pride when she said his last name. Whitmore, she'd repeat, testing the weight of it in her mouth. Claire loved him, I think she did, but she loved the elevation more. The engagement party was the first time I noticed the shift. Guests would ask me what I did. Before I could answer, my mother would swoop in. "Oh, she's in housekeeping," she'd say brightly, very hands-on. The first time I blinked. "Housekeeping," someone repeated. "Yes," she continued smoothly, "she cleans vacation properties." She didn't technically lie. But she cut out the part where I owned them. I felt heat creep up my neck. I laughed it off. At first. But it kept happening. At the bridal shower. At the rehearsal dinner. Emily, oh, she just cleans houses, very humble work. Just. Every time she said it, something small inside me calcified. Claire never corrected her. She would give me that apologetic little look, the one that said, "Please don't make this awkward." As if my existence was the awkward part. The wedding was held at a private estate outside the city. White tents, string quartets, crystal glasses catching late afternoon light. I wore a navy dress that cost more than my first month's rent at 19. I stood straight. I smiled. I congratulated. And then I heard it again. We were near the Champagne Tower when one of Daniel's aunts asked about me. "And what do you do, dear?" she asked, warm but curious. Before I could inhale, my mother answered. "She just cleans houses," she said lightly, waving a manicured hand. "She helps maintain rentals, very simple life." Simple. I felt the word like a slap. The aunt tilted her head. "That's honest work." "Oh, of course," my mother rushed. "We've always taught our girls humility." Humility. My ears rang. Daniel was standing a few feet away. I didn't realize he'd heard until he turned. And smiled. But not politely. It was a sharp, almost amused smile. "She cleans houses," he repeated, looking directly at me. Something in his eyes told me he knew. I swallowed. "I manage properties." My mother's laugh sliced through the air. "Oh, Emily, don't exaggerate." Exaggerate. That was the moment something shifted. Daniel's gaze moved between us. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Well," he said slowly, "that's interesting." Claire was called for photos. The music swelled. The conversation broke. But I saw it. Daniel wasn't confused. He was calculating. Because 2 months before the wedding, one of my LLCs had acquired a boutique hotel. From a struggling subsidiary of Whitmore Holdings. From Daniel. He hadn't met me in person during negotiations. My attorney handled everything. The purchase was clean, quiet, strategic. But the buyer's name, it was mine. Emily Turner. I didn't use a shell for that one. And he had definitely seen it. Which meant my parents weren't just diminishing me in front of strangers. They were doing it in front of a man who knew I'd just bought one of his underperforming assets. The reception began, speeches started. My father toasted Claire with teary pride. He spoke about her grace, her kindness, her elegant future. He mentioned me once. "And Emily," he said, smiling thinly, "has always been independent, hard-working in her own way." In her own way. The room chuckled softly. Then Daniel stood for his speech. He was composed, polished, every inch the heir apparent. He spoke about love, about partnership, about respect. Then his eyes found me. "And I want to thank someone unexpected," he said. My stomach dropped. "For teaching me something about underestimation." The room quieted. "My wife's sister," he continued, nodding toward me, "recently acquired a property from one of our family companies." A ripple went through the guests. She negotiated fiercely, fairly, and she improved the asset value in under 60 days. My mother's smile froze. Daniel's voice stayed smooth. "So when I hear someone say she just cleans houses, I have to disagree." The silence thickened. "She owns them." It wasn't loud. But it landed like a detonation. I felt every eye in the tent turn toward me. My father's face drained of color. Claire looked between us, confused. Daniel lifted his glass. "To Emily," he said, "a formidable businesswoman." Glasses clinked hesitantly. My mother's nails dug into my arm. "Why would he say that?" she hissed under her breath. I met her eyes. "For humility," I said softly. But that was only the beginning. Because humiliation cuts both ways. And they had no idea how long I'd been preparing to stop being quiet. The wedding ended with smiles stretched too tight, whispered conversations, curious glances. I drove home alone that night, heels kicked off in the passenger seat, adrenaline still humming under my skin. Vindication feels strange when it arrives publicly. It's not joy. It's exposure. And I knew deep down that my parents would not take this gracefully. I didn't know yet how ugly it would get, or how far I would eventually go to make sure they never reduced me again. But as I pulled into my driveway, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. 1 text. "We need to talk immediately." I stared at it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt ready. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7:12 a.m. Not a gentle call, not a curious call. An interrogation call. I let it ring twice before answering. Emily, my mother snapped before I could speak. No good morning, no pleasantries. What was that performance last night? Performance. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, staring out at the quiet street in front of the townhouse I owned outright. The sunlight was soft, calm, almost mocking. I didn't perform, I said evenly. Daniel told the truth. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. You embarrassed us. There it was. Not you lied to us. Not why didn't you tell us. Not we are proud of you. You embarrassed us. I embarrassed you, I repeated slowly, by owning property. You made it seem like we were hiding something. I almost laughed. You were. Silence heavy, dangerous. My father's voice joined the line. They had me on speaker. Why didn't you correct us privately? He asked, tone tight. Why let Daniel make a spectacle? Because you never would have listened privately. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, you've been telling people I just clean houses for 2 years. It's not untrue, my mother shot back. It's incomplete. It's simpler. Simpler. There it was again, the obsession with simplicity, with minimizing anything that didn't fit their hierarchy. You mean it's less threatening, I said. You are not part of this family's brand the way Claire is, my mother said before she could stop herself. The words hung there. Brand. Not love, not daughter. Brand. My chest felt tight but not from hurt, from clarity. You've always been intense, she continued, scrambling. Too ambitious, it makes people uncomfortable. No, I said quietly, it makes you uncomfortable. My father cleared his throat. We don't want Daniel's family thinking you're competing. Competing. With Claire. With them. The realization settled into my bones. They didn't diminish me because I was small. They diminished me because I was large in ways they couldn't control. And if Daniel respected me, if his family did, Claire wouldn't be the singular success story anymore. You're worried, I said slowly, that I outshine her. My mother gasped like I'd slapped her. How dare you? Because that's what this is. You are being dramatic, my father snapped. This isn't a competition. Then why have I always been losing? But I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I let my voice soften. I never wanted your spotlight, I said. I built my own. My mother's tone shifted then, cold, strategic. Well, she said, if you insist on presenting yourself as some kind of mogul, then you should understand appearances matter. Daniel's family operates at a certain level. We didn't want you misrepresenting yourself. Misrepresenting. As if I'd forged a resume. I bought one of their properties, I reminded her. And we were blindsided, she hissed. Do you know how humiliating that was, finding out from Daniel's speech? Humiliating. The word echoed. You know what's humiliating? Being erased in front of strangers. You never asked, I said. We assumed you would tell us if you'd done something significant. I let that sit. Significant. When I graduated top of my MBA class, they sent flowers. Claire got a catered party for finishing a yoga certification. When I closed my first 6-figure deal, my father said, That's nice, sweetheart. Claire got applause for hitting 10,000 followers. Significant had always been selective. I stopped telling you things, I said finally, because you stopped listening years ago. The line went quiet. Then my mother said something that made my stomach turn. Well, now that the truth is out, we need to manage it. Manage it. Like a PR crisis. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said carefully, we don't want you flaunting this. Claire's in-laws are very particular. We can't have them thinking you're positioning yourself within their circle. Positioning. Like I was stalking status. I almost admired the projection. You're asking me to shrink again, I said. We're asking you to be discreet, my father corrected. I thought about Daniel's face during the speech, calm, almost amused, as if he'd enjoyed exposing the narrative. You don't get to dictate my size anymore, I said. My mother's voice dropped low. If you disrupt Claire's marriage with your ambition, I will never forgive you. There it was, the threat wrapped in maternal silk. As if my success could dismantle a marriage. As if Claire's relationship was that fragile. I'm not responsible for what makes other people insecure, I replied. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From adrenaline. For years I had swallowed it, smiled, stayed small for peace. But peace built on self-erasure isn't peace, it's slow suffocation. And something in me had snapped. That week the ripple effects began. Extended family members started calling. Oh, we didn't realize you were doing so well. Why didn't you tell us? I always knew you were clever. Clever. Not accomplished, not strategic. Clever. I answered politely, deflected, downplayed. But I noticed something else. Daniel called me. Not to argue, not to apologize. To invite me to coffee. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, neutral territory. He looked different without wedding day polish, more retired, more real. I owe you an apology, he said after we ordered. For what? For not stepping in sooner. I suspected your parents were minimizing you at the engagement party. I raised an eyebrow. You suspected. I saw your face. That caught me off guard. You have a very controlled expression, he continued, but your jaw tightens when someone dismisses you. I hadn't realized. I didn't know the extent, he said, until I saw the acquisition paperwork months ago. He took a sip of his coffee. When I realized Emily Turner was you, I was impressed. Impressed enough to expose my family at your wedding. A flicker of something crossed his face. I didn't do it to embarrass them. Then why? He held my gaze. Because I don't like dishonesty. That answer was too clean. There was more. You also don't like losing assets, I said. A corner of his mouth lifted. Fair. There it was. He respected leverage. And in his world, respect was currency. Claire doesn't know the full scope of what you do, does she? He asked. She never asked. He nodded slowly. There are going to be shifts, he said. In your marriage. In perceptions. He wasn't wrong. By the end of that month, I received an invitation. A formal one. To a Whitmore Holdings investor dinner. Addressed to Ms. Emily Turner. Not Claire's sister. Not +1. Maid. My mother found out. How did you get that? She demanded over the phone. I was invited. By whom? Daniel. She went very still. You will decline, she said. No. You will not insert yourself into their business affairs. I already am, I replied calmly. Her breathing grew uneven. You are going to ruin everything. That word again. Ruined. As if my presence was destructive. But here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't trying to take Claire's place. I was claiming mine. And if that threatened the fragile scaffolding they'd built around her, maybe it was never stable to begin with. The night of the investor dinner I wore black, simple, sharp. The room buzzed with low voices and polished ambition. I didn't cling to Daniel. I didn't mention Claire. I spoke about yield optimization, renovation ROI, operational restructuring. And people listened. Really listened. By the end of the evening, 2 investors asked for meetings. One of them casually mentioned that Whitmore Holdings had been struggling with liquidity in one division. Interesting. Very interesting. When I got home, there was another message from my mother. Claire is upset. She thinks you're trying to prove something. I stared at the screen. Maybe I was. Not to Claire. Not to Daniel. But to the little girl who once asked for tuition help and got silence. The little girl who learned that love in our house came with ranking. I typed back. I'm not proving anything, I'm building. And this time I didn't feel guilty about it. What I didn't know yet was that my parents weren't going to settle for subtle pressure. They were about to make a move that would force my hand. And when they did, I would stop playing defense. 2 weeks after the investor dinner, my mother did something I should have expected. She tried to control the narrative. But this time, she didn't just whisper it at cocktail parties. She published it. I found out on a Tuesday morning. One of my long-term tenants forwarded me a link with a confused message. Is this about you? The article was on a local lifestyle blog, the kind my mother adored, polished suburban features about charity galas and women of influence luncheons. The headline made my stomach drop. From housekeeping to high society, a family's humble journey. There was a photo from Claire's wedding, cropped carefully. Claire radiant in white, my parents beaming beside her. And me slightly off to the side. The article framed our family as aspirational, grounded, hardworking. It mentioned my father's steady career, my mother's community involvement, Claire's rise into the Whitmore family. And then there was me. Her older sister, Emily, works diligently cleaning and maintaining rental homes. The Turners are proud that both daughters value honest labor. Works diligently cleaning. No mention of ownership, no mention of acquisitions. They didn't just minimize me at a wedding. They rewrote me in print. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. That was new. Anger used to feel hot. Now it felt cold, precise. This wasn't an accident. This was strategic. My mother had always been good at smiling while sharpening knives. I called her. She answered on the second ring, too quickly. Hi, sweetheart. Sweetheart. I saw the article. Oh, isn't it lovely? Such a beautiful tribute to our family. A tribute. You misrepresented me. It's not misrepresentation, she said lightly. It's simplification. People don't need all the details. They need the truth. The truth is complicated, she replied. And frankly, Emily, your financial position makes some people uncomfortable. There it was again. My success as social threat. You mean it makes you uncomfortable? Her voice hardened. You embarrassed us at the wedding. We're restoring balance. Balance. By shrinking me publicly. I leaned back in my chair. You're trying to put me back in my place. And where is that exactly? She snapped. There was venom there now, no more silk. Behind Claire. Silence. Then quietly, you've always resented her. The accusations slid across the line. I closed my eyes. I didn't resent Claire. I resented the system. I never resented her, I said evenly. I resented being invisible. You were never invisible. You just never looked. That hit, I heard it in her breathing. You're overreacting, she said finally. It's a blog post, let it go. Let it go. That phrase had been the soundtrack of my childhood. Let it go when Claire took my things. Let it go when she got praise for my ideas. Let it go when my achievements were footnotes. But something had shifted. And for the first time, I didn't feel like letting it go. I hung up without another word. Then I called my attorney. Not to sue. Not yet. To gather information. The blog post wasn't defamatory. It didn't lie outright. It just omitted. And omissions are slippery things. But perception matters. Especially in business. Within days, I noticed subtle changes. A contractor delayed returning my call. A property manager I'd been negotiating with seemed hesitant. Some investors are asking questions, he admitted carefully, about your background. My background? As if I'd fabricated it. I realized what my mother had done. She hadn't just humiliated me socially. She'd undercut my credibility. In certain circles, cleaning houses is honest work. But in investment circles, perception shapes leverage. She was trying to box me back into small. The old version of me would have confronted her emotionally. The new version started mapping strategy. I requested a meeting with Daniel. This time not for coffee. For clarity. We met in his office at Whitmore Holdings. Dark wood floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of room designed to intimidate. He didn't look surprised to see me. I was wondering how long it would take, he said. You saw it, I replied. He nodded. My mother forwarded it. Of course she did. He leaned back in his chair. She asked if your business operations were overstated. There it was. I felt the air in the room change. And what did you say? I said I've seen the paperwork. I studied him. And that underestimating you would be a mistake. Something in his tone felt different. Less amused. More cautious. My parents are trying to reframe me, I said plainly. It's affecting business perception. He was quiet for a moment. They're scared, he said. Of what? That your narrative disrupts theirs. And what is their narrative? That Claire married up. Up. As if life were a ladder. And if her sister is already operating at that level, he continued, then the climb isn't as dramatic. I almost smiled. So this was about prestige theatre. They think I'm competing, I said. You are, he replied calmly. The honesty startled me. I'm not trying to take Claire's place. I know, he said, but competition doesn't require intent, it just requires comparison. That landed. He wasn't wrong. In rooms built on hierarchy, existence becomes rivalry. What are you going to do? He asked. That question hung in the air. For years I had responded. Adjusted. Absorbed. This time I wanted to act. I'm going to correct the record, I said. How? Publicly. His eyebrow lifted slightly. That will escalate things. They already escalated. He studied me carefully. You don't do anything impulsively, he said, so I assume you've thought this through. I had. For 3 nights I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying childhood memories. The science fair project I built alone that Claire helped present. The scholarship letter my mother called nice before rushing to a dance recital. The quiet pride I swallowed every time I succeeded without applause. I realized something uncomfortable. I had accepted invisibility because it felt safer. If you're unseen, you can't be attacked. But you also can't be respected. And respect was something I'd built everywhere except at home. That stops now, I'd thought at 3:17 a.m. staring into darkness. Now, sitting across from Daniel, I felt calm. I'm hosting an investor open house, I said. For your portfolio. For my newest acquisition. He leaned forward slightly. The boutique hotel. Yes. That's bold. I've renovated it, increased occupancy by 20%, restructured vendor contracts, it's profitable now. His eyes sharpened. You're going to invite the same circles that read that blog. Yes. And your parents. I held his gaze. They'll receive an invitation. The corner of his mouth twitched. This is going to be uncomfortable. For them, I corrected. He exhaled slowly. Claire won't like this. I'm not doing it to hurt her. But it will. That was the first moment doubt flickered. Claire had never directly attacked me. She just never defended me either. Was I about to fracture something permanently? Then I remembered the blog post, the smiling photo, the narrative that erased me. I'm not responsible for protecting illusions, I said quietly. Daniel nodded once. Then do it thoroughly. And that was all the permission I needed. The invitations went out the following week. Heavy cardstock, clean design. Emily Turner cordially invites you to an exclusive preview of the Hawthorne House, a Turner Properties acquisition. My full name, my company, my ownership. I sent one to my parents' house. Addressed formally. No handwritten note. 2 days later my mother called. You're hosting a hotel event, she asked tightly. Yes. Why wasn't this discussed? Because it's my business. You're making a spectacle. No, I said calmly, I'm making a statement. You're trying to prove something. I am, I admitted. She went silent at that. And what is that? She asked. That I don't need to be reduced to make you comfortable. Her breathing grew sharp. Claire is already stressed. The wedding adjustments, the new family dynamics, now this. The implication was clear. My visibility equals her instability. That's not my burden, I said softly. You are tearing this family apart. No, the cracks were always there. I was just refusing to plaster over them. The night before the event, I stood alone in the hotel lobby. The Hawthorne House gleamed under warm lighting, fresh paint, polished brass, the air smelled faintly of citrus and cedar. I ran my hand along the reception desk. I had scrubbed floors in this building myself during renovations. Not because I had to, because I wanted to see every inch of what I owned. Tomorrow, the same people who read that article would walk through these doors. And they would see. Not the housekeeper. The owner. But revenge, I've learned, isn't loud. It's meticulous. And I wasn't done yet. Because what my parents didn't know, what no one knew, was that during due diligence on Whitmore's struggling properties, I'd uncovered something else. Something that could shift power in ways they would never anticipate. And I hadn't decided yet whether to use it. But after that blog post, I was getting closer. The night of the open house arrived cold and sharp. The kind of evening where the air feels clean enough to cut through doubt. I stood at the entrance of the Hawthorne House as guests began to arrive. Investors, developers, local press, even a few members of Daniel's extended circle. Soft piano music drifted through the lobby. Champagne glasses clinked lightly. Warm lighting reflected off restored wood floors that I had once knelt on, sanding by hand when a contractor tried to overcharge me. I didn't rush to greet anyone. I didn't cling. I let them walk in and see it first. The front desk with its brushed brass fixtures, the preserved crown moulding, the framed before and after photos along the wall, occupancy data subtly displayed on an easel near the bar. Numbers don't shout. They prove. Then my parents walked in. My mother wore a pale blue dress that tried very hard to look effortless. My father's jaw was already tight. Claire followed behind them, her expression unreadable. Daniel came last. He met my eyes briefly. A silent acknowledgement. My mother approached me with the brittle smile I knew too well. Well, she said, looking around, this is ambitious. It's profitable, I corrected gently. Her smile faltered. Guests began to recognize my parents from the wedding, polite nods, small talk. Then the questions started. Emily, how did you source this property? What's your renovation ROI? Are you expanding regionally? I answered calmly, clearly without apology. My father drifted closer, listening. At one point, an investor turned to him. You must be very proud, the man said. Your daughter has remarkable instincts. I watched my father's face in real time. The instinct to minimize flickered. But there were too many witnesses. Yes, he said stiffly, she's done well. Done well. Not lucked out, not cleaning houses. Done well. Claire wandered through the lobby quietly, taking in the details. She paused at the framed documentation of acquisition. Turner Properties, LLC. Purchase finalized 8 months ago. She turned to me later, near the staircase. Why didn't you tell me? She asked softly. There was no accusation in her tone. Just something more fragile. Tell you what? I asked. That you were operating at this level. I held her gaze. Would you have listened? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Daniel joined us. I underestimated the timeline of your turnaround, he said to me. 20% occupancy growth is aggressive. I don't waste underperforming assets, I replied. Something passed between us then. Respect, yes. But also recognition. I had leverage. And leverage shifts rooms. Halfway through the evening, a local business reporter asked if I'd give a short remark. 5 minutes. Nothing dramatic. I agreed. Not for ego. For documentation. The room gathered near the staircase, conversations quieted. I stood on the second step, not elevated too high, just enough. When I purchased this property, I began, it was considered a risk. A few subtle glances toward Daniel. I believe in risk when it's calculated. I believe in rebuilding what others overlook. I let that hang for a breath. I also believe that perception shapes opportunity. Sometimes people define you by the smallest part of what you do. My mother's shoulders stiffened. I've cleaned rooms in this building myself, I continued, not because that's all I am, but because I value knowing every layer of what I own. A pause. There is dignity in work, all work, but there is also power in ownership. The silence deepened. I built this portfolio quietly. I don't plan to build quietly anymore. No applause at first. Then slowly it started. Measured. Respectful. Real. When I stepped down, my father avoided my eyes. My mother looked like someone who had just realized the script no longer belonged to her. Claire looked thoughtful. The evening ended without drama. No shouting. No public explosions. That wasn't my style. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about repositioning. But there was still one piece left. The one I had discovered during due diligence months ago. While reviewing Watmer Holdings' subsidiary financials, I noticed irregular transfers. Nothing illegal on the surface, just aggressive internal balancing that masked underperforming divisions. Temporary liquidity boosts before quarterly reporting. It wasn't criminal, but it was fragile. And Daniel knew it. We met privately the week after the event. You made your point, he said calmly. I'm not done. He nodded slowly. I figured. I slid a folder across his desk. Inside were projections. Not threats. Opportunities. I know your coastal division is stretched, I said. I also know you'll need outside capital within a year. He didn't deny it. I'm prepared to invest, I continued. His eyes lifted sharply. Under one condition. Which is no more narrative control from my family about who I am. Silence filled the office. That's not entirely within my jurisdiction, he said carefully. It is within your influence. He studied me for a long time. You'd leverage investment for reputation. I'd align partnership with respect. It wasn't blackmail. It was boundary. Finally he nodded. I can ensure the record is corrected. And that your position is acknowledged in future dealings. I leaned back. That was enough. Within a month, Watmer Holdings released a regional business spotlight, Futyang Strategic Partners. My name was included. full credentials, portfolio size, growth metrics. Not housekeeper, investor, operator, owner. The same blog that had run the wedding piece requested an interview. This time I accepted. The article that followed was very different. Local entrepreneur revitalizes boutique hospitality. My parents weren't quoted. They weren't mentioned at all. And that was deliberate. The real shift, though, happened quietly at a family dinner weeks later. No events, no investors. Just the four of us. My mother hesitated before speaking. "We may have simplified things too much," she said carefully. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest she'd ever come. My father cleared his throat. "You've built something substantial. Substantial. Not small. Not simple." Claire looked at me across the table. "I never realized you felt erased," she said softly. "I didn't either," I replied honestly, "not fully." The air felt different that night. Not warm, but honest. And honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, is cleaner than polished lies. As I drove home, I thought about revenge. People imagine fireworks, ruin, public collapse. But real revenge, it's reclaiming authorship. It's forcing truth into rooms that preferred illusion. My parents wanted me small because small was controllable. But I was never small. I was strategic. And strategy, when paired with patience, is unstoppable. I still clean properties sometimes. When I want to think. When I want to remember where I started. There is dignity in Lubkai. But there is power in refusing to let anyone decide that's all you are. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone tried to shrink you to protect their comfort, remember this. You don't have to scream to be powerful. You just have to own the room when it matters. Thank you for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever reclaimed your narrative, make sure you subscribe and share your experience below. Because sometimes the most satisfying karma isn't loud. It's undeniable.